This episode's made possible by Planful.
Hi, this is Joe Wolk, CFO of Johnson & Johnson, and you're listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast with Jack Sweeney.
This is episode 932.
For your first $1 million, it's all about perfecting the idea. That's your main focus. Between 1 and 3 million, your focus is on, do we have the right product? Between 3 and 10 million, the focus is on, do we have a market for this product? And let's prove that out. And it's between 10 and 30 million that you really have to nail your business model, because the next climb from 30 to 100, if you don't have your business model right, you're scaling now, and it's going to take a lot more to be able to do that. So we are really beginning that scaling of our company. We're very established in certain markets. We're going after additional markets. And as we do that, as a CFO, I really want to grow profitably and really get to a rule of 40. So we have a line of sight, and we are marching towards that.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Jeff Coulter, CFO of Cognite. Looking back, Jeff Coulter is not exactly certain how he landed a spot on an implementation team tasked with designing and implementing the budgeting and reporting processes that would track Procter & Gamble's marketing dollars on a single worldwide system. For his part, Coulter was plucked out of Procter & Gamble's Iowa City office, where he'd been working as a cost analyst for such products as Pantene and Scope. The new assignment required Coulter to relocate to Cincinnati, where for the next 2 years he became involved in multiple aspects of the implementation, including the rollout of end-user training across P&G globally. Budgeting and reporting for the marketing masses. You'll hear that story and much more after this.
Hi, I'm Rowan Tonkin, Chief Marketing Officer at Planful, and we're a proud sponsor of CFO Thought Leader. At Planful, we're empowering teams just like yours to drive peak financial performance in every corner of your business. What sets Planful apart? We have purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. This means we can get you up and running within weeks, and it requires minimal IT involvement. So you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business in your key financial processes. Best of all, you can't outgrow us. We take the pain of growing away with an unmatched ability to scale with you. You have an endless runway with Planful. See why over 1,300 customers around the world choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Go to planful.com and see how you can make financial performance a team sport in your business.
So, hello, we're speaking with Jeff Coulter, CFO of Cognite. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and really looking forward to it.
Jeff, we always begin by asking our guests to look back for us. And what we're looking for are those experiences you feel really prepared you for a finance role, a finance leadership role. What would come to mind for you?
Yeah, so, I actually started out my career thinking I wanted to do marketing, and I did an internship with Marriott International out in Maryland, and had a great experience, but realized, I really didn't need to study marketing. It might offend some people, but didn't need to study marketing to do marketing, and I felt like I needed to go back and do something that was, a little more growth mindset for me and stretch me a little bit. So I decided to change my whole schedule and do all finance classes, and boy, I'm glad I did. I did my undergraduate in organizational psychology. So finance, I felt like, was a really good complement to that, the people side and a little more of the analytical side. and Procter and Gamble came along, and it was a perfect fit because that was my first job out of MBA school, which I did at BYU, and but Procter and Gamble is very much a marketing and finance driven, a great finance rotation program. Someone gave me the advice early on, and it was someone I looked up to. They were a mentor of mine. They said, early in your career, find the jobs that are going to train you the best. Don't go seeking after titles, and because then when the finance leadership does come, you're going to feel very comfortable in that seat and having done the groundwork. So at Procter and Gamble, all roads lead to a factory assignment. First off, either your first or second assignment. So mine, I decided to do first, and I was in Iowa City as a cost analyst for their Pantene, and we made Scope, and it was great. Right out of school, I'm managing a department, but also they have you on the lines. It's flow to the work. So if there's a disruption, everybody heads out. I got trained on all the equipment, and really learned so much just on the ground there. Then did an assignment in Cincinnati with implementing SAP, where we're taking literally 500 disparate systems and bring them into one SAP system. This was SAP, bring back the times where it was really exploding in around 2000.
So wow, it's the client server era, pre-cloud, lots of consulting work on site to make the systems work. Just a entirely different time, really.
Yeah, it was, and such a huge undertaking with a company like that. It was great to get visibility, and of course I worked on the marketing aspects of it. And all those workflows, and then training globally. So early on in career, having quite a bit of responsibility in a technical area, I think gave me a really good underpinning.
Do you recall, how did you land on that implementation team? I mean, were you perceived to be something of a tech guru, or?
I was not. It's a really good question, because Procter and Gamble has a unique culture. They only hire college graduates. And then they train you from within, and they just assume we're going to give you all the training that you're going to need. And I would call their career management at the time, I don't know what it is now, but at the time, was a benevolent dictatorship. So, you in development, you could talk about some things that you're interested in, but really they try to balance that out, and you're basically assigned where you're going to go next. And my time at Procter and Gamble was incredible. It was, if it hadn't been for needing a geography move, I would have probably stayed there my whole career.
Well, the reason I asked the tech question is because, I know where you're headed, and you're headed to Intel, and I'm wondering if there was a bridge that was made easier to get to Intel. Technology, you're going from a packaged goods company to a technology. It's not always a typical bridge to pass over, but I'll let you explain.
Yeah, like I said, I needed to get, I was born and raised in Vegas, and I had some family that moved all in the West, and just it's a tough draw to Cincinnati from there. So I needed a geography move, and Intel was a very natural fit for me, and also had a great training program, like we had talked about, where I could get exposure through rotations on various areas of the company. But really, there's nothing that can prepare you sufficiently coming from a finance degree for a life in a semiconductor. You just have to go in and learn it. I think what does prepare you is having a growth mindset. Even though I was a psychology undergrad and I worked for a consumer products company, the fact that I love learning, and I love learning the technology. And so that really serves you well. And once you learn the technology, that's what's great about finance, by the way, is with finance, you can go work for a nonprofit, you can go work for consumer products, you can go work for large tech, you can go work, you can do government if you want it. It's so versatile. And you just need to learn the business, and then you can apply the financial things that you've learned through your career to that business model. And I would say that I'm more of a business model junkie than I am any tech junkie. I love learning business models and figuring out how they're making money and how to optimize that. And so the fact that I was exposed to various business models, on average, I bet about 5 years at each place that I stopped at. P&G was about 5. Intel was 6. I just was a year short of a sabbatical. I still kick myself for leaving before that kicked in. That's a great thing at Intel.
So you arrive in 2000, so you kind of missed the, I guess, Andy Grove era.
Yeah, it was Craig Barrett, and we had Andy Bryan as our CFO, so he was kind of the old guard. You know, I got to do various roles there at Intel, but in one of them, I got to lead a strategic influence forum for finance, where finance would bring in projects where we felt like we had at least a 20% stake in shaping the strategy of a significant area of the company. And Andy was the ultimate adjudicator of whether or not it qualified. And me and Teresa Kelly, we got to run that forum. And you would think that he just was not engaged because he wouldn't say anything until he did. And it usually wasn't a statement. It was usually in the form of a question that completely changed everybody's thinking. And he usually started off with, you know, I'm just a simple farm boy from Kansas, and I don't know a whole lot, which was a massive understatement. But the way I see it is you're trading off X for Y, and it would cause everyone to just completely rethink their strategy. So the way and the style that he led wasn't a lot of assertions. It was a lot of listening. I would say 90% listening, and then the art of asking really good questions. It was really good experience for me to be exposed to that.
Yeah, well, thank you for letting me bring him up. I only bring him up because his books, surprisingly, are frequently recommended on this podcast by finance people who, unlike you, didn't have the opportunity to work at Intel or even meet him. But till this day, some of his management practices are still highly valued by finance people, I think, in particular.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, he had influence on Michael Porter. He added additional forces to the 5 forces. He added substitutes and complements. He kind of coined the phrase of strategic inflection point. He brought in Clayton Christensen with disruptive technology. He was one of the first to embrace that as a concept, and it really fed into his only the paranoid survive. So Andy was just an amazing Hungarian immigrant who came over and just did amazing things. Between him and more, you know, they really, I mean, where would we be without those guys right now? An incredible influence on the market.
So you mentioned it was a 4-year investment at P&G of your career years. It was 6 years at Intel. Tell us something about what you experienced there as far as maturing into the ranks of senior finance folks. Are you pleased with the investment as you go along? Was there an itch to move on yet? What was happening with you?
Intel brought to me things I've taken with me the rest of my career. I got to work on creating a strategy from the middle class. You know, it's Intel University has a really big personal development, and they have a university inside of Intel, and it allowed some flexibility for me in a strategic finance role. I could go in and create a class, and I was able to go and teach that in intact sessions, basically for middle managers to help them understand how to apply strategic frameworks. You know, at an Intel with Andy Grove as an example, you know, they really embraced being strategic and that being a skill set. So that's something I've taken with me in every other job since. Another thing is finance development. At Intel, they created a true rubric for helping you manage your career from beginning as an individual contributor to then working cross team to being a manager to being a leader, and including in that a technical component, and really kind of help define what does good look like, what does great look like, and how do you recognize those behaviors. And I use those in development discussions even today. Super beneficial. The other thing I took with me are OKRs. It's those were pioneered at Intel and in every company, either helping out with OKRs or rolling out OKRs for the first time.
So, post Intel, tell us what it is that you're looking for next.
My transition out of Intel was, again, a geography. They decided to move they had moved us to Utah. They had a big operation there, and they decided to consolidate. And I was done moving my family. I determined early in our career with my wife and I, she stayed home with the kids, and I determined I'll go as far as I can where I can still be a dad and still be a husband. And I was at a crossroads. Do I go and continue with Intel, or do I stay near family? And so I made a personal decision to stay there and did 2 amazing growth stage company experiences. One with a craft technology product called Cricut. And, 5 years, we grew it from 100 to 300 million. So huge scaling, a new technology that was category defining. And in that company, now I'm starting to branch out of finance, and I'm rolling up my sleeves and working with great people to go land Walmart for a Black Friday event, to go work on an infomercial. Still doing finance all along the way, but tremendous experience of rolling up the sleeves. And then I got my first taste of a SaaS software company with my next role as CFO of eFile Cabinet. Private equity owned, great management, great sponsors, but taking a company that started off with 25 employees, and when I was there, we grew it to 125. And at a small company like that, you're not only rolling up your sleeves, helping out with sales models and pricing, commission structures, but you're doing a barbecue on a Friday. You're taking out the trash. When you move office locations, it's me and a few others, and we're going to spend the weekend getting that moved. And it kind of really taught me what it takes, at the ground level to mature a company. And it's a lot of effort.
Now, can I ask, was that your first CFO chapter?
Yeah, that was my first. Yeah. So smaller company.
Did you join as, were you appointed CFO from the start, or was there an interim period, or how did it work?
I started as the COO, and then that morphed into becoming the CFO.
So were you recruited, or was there a part of your network that helped you?
Yeah, that was part of my network. I was good friends with the person who was CEO, Matt Peterson, at the time.
Came in an operational role, and then subsequently was appointed CFO.
Yeah.
Into your tenure. You were there 5 years, so you experienced a lot of growth, one would think, first 5 years.
Yeah, a lot of growth, a lot of changing. We transformed from a perpetual model, license model, to a subscription model, launched a SaaS product that was based on multi-tenant, offering true SaaS product, and and really kind of catered towards small and medium-sized businesses. And they're still doing great. They're under Jesse Wood is the CEO of that company right now, but they have a great niche and a great product. But I started looking at my career and thinking, I want to do more. I want to be able to scale to a CFO position of a larger organization. And I realized that I needed to take even a step back to be able to do that. So I joined a company called JDA Software. They later renamed themselves to Blue Yonder Supply Chain Software, larger company, about $1 billion in revenue. But it VP of Corp FP&A role. I had done a lot of operations roles throughout my career, but I've never done that consolidating role. And I felt like, and when I was at eFile Cabinet, Adobe was there. Adobe was there from their acquisition of Omniture, and they were hiring a site CFO for that location. And Omniture was critical to their transformation to a SaaS company. So it was a big role. And I made it to the top 2 candidates, and the feedback that I got, I took to heart. And it was, you've been a CFO before and you've been with larger companies, but you haven't been a CFO of a larger company. And it was a great growth opportunity for me to say, let me go and pick up what I need for that. So at Blue Yonder, soon after I joined, we took on an investment from Blackstone. As in Corp FP&A, I got to be right on the ground floor of that. Then we refinanced $1.5 billion of debt. We made 2 major acquisitions, and then we did several transformations as Girish Rishi came on. We transformed from a perpetual model to a SaaS subscription model, growing our ARR. Can't share the numbers, but it was a tremendous growth in our ARR as we look to make that transition. The other thing that we transformed is we went from a global go-to-market to a regional go-to-market, regional theater model. We were spending about 90% of our R&D on maintaining our existing products and only about 10% on innovation. And we flipped that to 70-30. So just a tremendous amount. And then we adopted AI, ML, adopted technologies, and that was part of the acquisition we did with Blue Yonder. Did a rebranding. So you can imagine that experience for me. P&G, Intel, you're very limited in your scope. You go deep, but it's limited scope with such a large company. A couple of growth stage companies, but then I got to be part of a decent sized company, but really got to see it all come together in that role. It was very formidable for me. And not only did it help me learn, but it kind of gave me confidence. Right. So, and in that, I went from VP to group vice president to senior vice president in those 5 years, all in the same job, which is, I also got to serve a year while doing my day job to be a chief of staff for the CEO, Girish Rishi. One of the hardest things I've ever done, and yet one of the best things. I'll probably never do it again, but it was super, super beneficial for me.
So, Jeff, going back to our original question, what's left? What set of skills are you at that point still looking to acquire or polish before you enter the C-suite at Cognite?
Well, the last piece I'll just add is I took another lateral move after Blue Yonder to go and pick up that same experience, but for a public company. So I worked at Instructure for the last year and a half. So that's the exception to my tenure. And I feel very loyal to companies, and it was a sad parting, but to come here to Cognite, but picking up, 7 quarters of an earnings cycle with the beat and raise, and working for a Thoma Bravo company who basically write the book on how to manage a software company. It felt like yet another PhD in FP&A that I got from them.
Okay, well, we may have a few more career-related questions for you a little later, maybe in the mentoring round. But right now, let's find out about Cognite. What would you tell us about this company? What does it do? What are its offerings about?
So Cognite started about 2016 in Norway, and that's where their major presence is today. And the idea is to continue to build out and grow and scale and expand, but we're building out more expansion into the U.S. So they've brought on a U.S. based CEO, Girish Rishi, a head of product, a head of revenue from PTC, a head of product that came from Microsoft that was the general manager of a $2 billion business in this same space, and myself, with the idea of really expanding out and creating optionality for the company in the U.S. capital markets, right? So
I know it's an industrial software company, but what does that mean exactly?
So great that you asked that. So they do data contextualization. Let me break that down for you from a CFO perspective. Coming into a business, there's lots of different types of data, and data is your lifeblood. Without data, you don't have your mission control to run your company. So imagine a large industrial company, oil and gas, manufacturing, multinational companies, and the different types of data that come in. There's engineering data. They have schematics of their operations. They have CAD designs, etc. You also have, with the advent of IoT, you have sensor data, time series data that's spitting off all this information. You've got business data, work orders, POs, invoices. You've also got even pictures and 3D renderings. So you talk about trying to manage this data and how do you pull it all together, because you could have a piece of machinery or a customer called differently in every one of those data sets. So as you try to bring all these together, how do you do that in a way that actually makes sense? And it's really difficult. You have data warehouses that organize and structure your data. You have data lakes where you can put it all in one place, but it's not super organized. And then you have solutions like Snowflake, that's a data kind of a lake house that's bringing all that data in and providing some structure, but you still have to spend a lot of cycles and time connecting those different data sources to each other. So that's where Cognite comes in, is they come in and they have technology that does those connecting between those databases, even with 3D renderings that bring all those together. So now you can actually start to make sense of all that data. So tying those data together, that's called data contextualization. And they use very sophisticated behind the scenes, but very elegant to the end user, very elegant ways of using AI ML to learn. So if it's called this here in this database for XYZ machine, and it's called this over here, they have very similar descriptions. I'm going to be 90% confident that those two mean the same thing, and it can learn. And as you accept that, it says, okay, that's what it is. Now I'm going to go back and relearn and look through other things. It starts tying all this together. And now you can actually really start to do some amazing things with your existing systems. It's a scaler of your existing systems, and it extends the life of them, but it also creates and unlocks additional value in the value chain. So as a CFO, I can now start running simulations on pumps. I can start doing predictive maintenance on when I think a pump is going to go out based on what I've learned in the past, and reduce my downtime, because if we're not running, we're not making money. So if I can reduce my downtime and do all the maintenance at once, and that's going to save. And in an oil and gas company that's multinational, a small change in operation efficiency is millions of dollars.
So can you give us a sort of a snapshot of the capital structure and maybe a little bit of the history? What would you tell us?
So what I can publicly share with you is that we have just we have a long-time digitization partner in the Middle East who acquired about a 7.5% stake in Cognite in February of 2022. And this came in addition to about $225 million that we had raised from leading global technology investors TCV and Excel. And our original investor was Aker Group out of Norway.
Well, thank you for that. We always like to ask you about your lines of sight. And again, Jeff, I know you've only been there 30 days, but you know how important this is to be able to see into the business and understand how customer relationships are maturing or changing. How are your lines of sight? And again, you're just getting just learning where the light switches are, perhaps. But what would you tell us about when you look in? What are the top of mind metrics you're looking at?
It's very simple. Profitable growth. No longer can companies just grow at all costs. Profitability is also important. And I've learned something throughout my career, which is that you don't wait to be profitable once you scale. You really have to learn how to be profitable. It's a muscle. It's something that has to be learned in the organization, and you first become profitable, then you can scale profitably. It's really hard to do that. And you see companies that just continue to grow and grow and grow, and they just never quite get there. And almost it's a detriment the more you scale if you haven't learned to do that. Having said, we'll be opportunistic around exploiting, new market opportunities and make smart investments. But my mandate is very clear, and it's really a wonderful graduation and milestone in a company when you can say, hey, we've crossed over and we're profitable now. It's a sign of maturation. Qian Zhu, who's the CEO of Zuora, had a great it's called The Climb. It talks about companies as they go through a great construct where for your first $1 million, it's all about perfecting the idea. That's your main focus. Between 1 and 3 million, your focus is on, do we have the right product? Between 3 and 10 million, the focus is on, do we have a market for this product? And let's prove that out. And it's between 10 and 30 million that you really have to nail your business model, because the next climb from 30 to 100, if you don't have your business model right, you're scaling now, and it's going to take a lot more to be able to do that. So we are really beginning that scaling of our company. We're very established in certain markets. We're going after additional markets. And as we do that, as a CFO, I really want to grow profitably and really get to a rule of 40. So we have a line of sight, and we are marching towards that.
We've been asking finance leaders to share some thoughts on AI with us. I'm curious, as you think about this role, how AI might change what you do, assist you, help you take leaps forward. What would you share with us?
Yeah, AI is, we're going to look back at this time and not know what we did without it. And the use cases, I think we've just scratched the surface. For Cognite as a company with our solution, so not just talking about our own operations, but talking about what we can do for customers, we've already been able to tie AI and those cognitive language models into our solutions so that you can have a very natural conversation. I talked about all these different pieces of data. You can bring those all into one canvas on your desktop and and ask questions. But it's not just data that's publicly available, but it's data that is internally available, and it allows you to not only apply that cognitive AI to the public domain, but to your private proprietary data, and ask questions like, wow, show me all the pumps that had a dip in and had a rise in temperature when the temperature outside was X degrees. And you bring in all these different pieces of data, and it will immediately come back with, here's all the pumps. And okay, show me this pump and all the systems that are around it. Like it's incredible the kind of querying you can do. And it's going to just really be, it's a strategic inflection point for the world, but specifically in industrial data, it's extremely powerful. And we can't talk enough about it with our customers. They're coming to us with what are the use cases and show us how we, they're looking for leadership right now. As a function, as I look at, Cognite and the fact that, the back office and what we're the same way. We need all of that data. So to be able to do that same thing with our own data systems is huge. We've got an ERP, we've got expense software, we've got PO systems. We have all these different pieces of data. We've got our customer data with our CRMs. To be able to pull all those together and start doing some predictive things around which customers would be the most likely product market fit for us, which customers in our current pipeline are the furthest along and the ones that are the closest to consummating a deal. Those are all super valuable when you're trying to develop a predictable business model. And as you look to go into public markets, that predictability becomes super important. And you get that with SaaS innately, but also there's still that growth engine that you have to be able to predict as well.
Just want to touch on that a little more with you. You described that stack of applications that finance is dependent on. Are you confident the applications that make up that existing stack is going to be AI ready? Is your ERP, for instance, sending you the signals that we're ready to leverage this along with you? Let's do it.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but it's been my experience, and the listeners maybe have a perspective here too. But the back office typically lags. Salesforce came out a long time before NetSuite came out. And, so it tends to lag a bit. So what will end up happening is if we want to see something and take advantage of something within our own network, we're going to have to figure out how to do it ourselves initially. I feel it's an opportunity for companies, but there tends to be if you're a technology company and you're going to try to target, you're probably going to go after the go-to-market machine first because it's just the lifeblood of a company, and then tackle later the back office.
No question. I think you're making an interesting point. And meanwhile, we are up to our finance strategic moment where we ask you to share a moment of strategic insight that you experienced at some point in your career because you were a finance executive with lines of sight into the business. You saw something. What comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah. So, I mentioned it when I was at Intel, we ran this strategic finance forum. And when I finished that role, I went to work as the strategic finance manager for our $2 billion memory business that did NOR memory, so flash memory that goes into cell phones and washing machines and cars. And this was around 2003, and the convergence of the iPhone had not yet happened, where you took your MP3 player and your digital camera and your Palm Pilot and you mashed all these together into one device. And Intel's strategy for using flash was, once the computer processor is done with the assets in a big $2 billion fab, then instead of writing those off, we'll reuse those assets and continue to extend the life of on NOR. And that NOR memory is used to kind of run the processor, and the NAND memory is the storage. And we're running this business, and we're making decent margins, and we're playing our corporate duty of avoiding a write-off with these assets. But we got to thinking as a finance team, what about this NAND technology? And we were talking with different technology experts and reading Gartner reports, and we had the notion independently of, should we instead start going into NAND memory? And as a finance team, in finance, you don't typically make all the decisions. Usually your business partner, it's a CEO or it's a GM. And what you have to do is you have to be a good business partner. But it's the paradox where to be a good business partner, I have to put myself in their shoes and think like them while still respecting the fact that they're the ultimate decision maker. So the way we did this was we sat out independently to come up with what are our thoughts within finance? What's our point of view around whether or not we should continue to milk our NOR technology or expand into NAND? And we did analysis, and we brought that now to the general manager of the business. And we said, here's our findings. It's yours. Take it, run with it. Let us partner with you. And they loved it and thought, you know what, you're onto something. They became the champion of the idea, and we kind of sat now in a supportive role and took it to Paul Otellini in a division day that they would hold at Intel, and said, here's this idea that we have. And they owned it. It was their idea now. And that got a green light, and we started looking at various ways we could enter that market through acquisition, through joint ventures, and ultimately started narrowing in on doing an investment with a current NAND memory company, which was Micron at the time, and started looking at what that would look like. And then the magic happened. In Park City, Utah, Paul Otellini and Steve Jobs were in an elevator at a conference, and Steve Jobs said, hey, I heard you were thinking about getting into NAND memory. If you do, I'll place your first $500 million order. And the deal got done. And they started a joint venture called IM Flash, and that's continued on. And it was a great example of how finance can partner within the context of their role as a partner, not taking over, but to be a true partner, and then allowing their kind of role in that to change and morph over time, and not worrying about too much about who gets the credit. Just let's make the right decision.
From episode 759, this is Dave Bernhardt, CFO of SentinelOne.
The idea of the 9-month IPO was not on anyone's radar. But then we just started working on this list of, 1,000 or so items that we needed to do as a company to get there. And there was never a pushback, never a question. It was just like, okay, well, send the list around and we'll all get started. And we just started plugging along at it. And, by a couple months in, we were like, wow, this is starting to appear achievable way faster than we thought. We were getting courted by bankers who were very excited about us, based on our top line growth. And it just became something where we never really had a push from our investors. It was more ourselves going, we want to compete transparently in the public market. And that was something we could only get through the IPO.
And then we jump to what we refer to as our mentoring round, where I'll ask you several quick questions intended to inform and inspire future finance leaders. You've stepped into a few CFO roles, but we want you to look back at the first, and of course, you're still in your first 30 to 60 days of this one. But in the past, when you've taken on leadership responsibilities, was there something you wish somebody had told you? All of it fell on your shoulders all of a sudden. And if I only had this one piece of advice back then, it would have meant so much. What would that have been?
I don't think I would have realized back then how fun it really is. Finance gives you a lens that I feel like is the best lens to look through any company, and how fun it is to actually build a profitable, growing company. And I remember being at one of these growth stage companies and being at a company picnic, and I had a moment with the CEO when everything had kind of died down, and he's looking at all these families. And he's like, look at what we've created. There's college education that's going to happen here. We're taking care of these families, and it's a weight. It is a weight. It's not just you. It's your customers. It's your families of your employees. But I early on in my life, I wanted to be a doctor, so I thought that was pretty noble. And at that moment, I thought, you know what? Giving someone an honest job and something that they could feel proud about and be able to go home to their families and take care of their families, that's noble too. So I didn't realize at the time how fun that would be, and I think it's pretty motivating to people.
Very nice. Thank you. We'd like to ask our guests to reflect a little bit on the personal side. We're wondering if you have a personal habit or part of a daily routine, something that sets you apart that people point out and say, that's just Jeff. He's always done that.
Maybe it's not a habit. I mean, I think I have typical habits that everybody else has. I get up in the morning. I have a routine, usually involves some meditation, some exercise, and some eating. And I do make lists. I try to keep my inbox clean. I think for me and my personality, if you look at my inbox when I go home to bed at night, and this might be crazy to some people, but it's at zero just about every night, because I like to start off the morning with a clean slate. If I have something, I deal with it immediately. I try to keep very small the list of things that I'm going to do later. But there was one thing I want to mention beyond the routines is that it's very easy to get caught up in your task and to think, okay, this is my work. And then when people come and interrupt you, to think you're keeping me from my work. There was a day that I realized that interruption is my work. And that was really important for me. I needed to change that.
Interesting. Well put. We haven't had it expressed that way before, but I think you said something that will resonate strongly. So thank you for that. Wondering if you have a book you'd like to recommend. Doesn't have to be a business book. Might be something you escape with. Don't know, but anything come to mind?
Oh, it's my new favorite strategy book, Zone to Win by Jeffrey Moore. It's he kind of picks up where Dr. Christensen leaves off on disruptive technologies. Dr. Christensen does a great job of defining what does a disruption look like and how do you detect it and know when you're in it, and what's the result of it. But what he doesn't quite do, and where Jeffrey Moore picks up, is how do you manage so that you don't succumb to a disruption in your area. And he gives a great model that I've used now in 2 companies, and I know that's been adopted by Salesforce, Microsoft, Intel, others, but where you break out your business and you have different governing models for your performance zone, where you do your primary go to market. You have a productivity zone that supports that. You have an incubation zone where you can isolate out and treat differently investments so that they're not cut the minute your performance zone has issues. And then there's a whole disruption zone where when you're being disrupted, everything's got to change, and it's CEO. So there's different governance models. It's a plane ride from Phoenix to New York length read, and it's fascinating. If you love business models, it's a fascinating read. But I think it's super important for finance. It's a way for finance to inject finance with strategy. So you can organize your budgets around these different modalities.
Outstanding. Strangely, we haven't had it before, and I'm not really certain why, but thank you for providing it. We are up to our final question, which asks you to look forward finally, and we're interested in your priorities as a CFO of Cognite. What would those be?
Well, I'm starting off on a huge listening campaign. Even my wife reminds me, you have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen. I really want to understand the business and how we're doing things, but my filter as I listen to all those is how can we grow and how can we be profitable as we grow? And ideally, you become profitable through growth and as you continue to grow. And so that's my priority, and getting us in a place where we have optionality for future. As we mature, we've been through a Series A, we've been through a Series B, and as we continue to mature, to put us in a position where we have options on the table for continuing to grow. A profitable, growing company is better for our customers. They know that they have something that's going to sustain. We talk with companies that have been around for 100 years. They need partners that are going to be around for 100 years, and you do that by being profitable and continuing to grow. And it's also better for our families, the employees and those that they take care of. So those are my priorities. Great question.
Jeff Coulter, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com and, of course, our newsletters, but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.